Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Chow, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Assistant Inspector General Brian Buckner, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Suthers, Shields, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum. Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the date preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public, please, sir, please put your hand down. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of speakers will be a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending a meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out the public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we will have item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Chow.
Thank you. Good morning, Commission President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners Mr. Buckner, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous week, providing a crime update, and then discussing our personnel strength. We have had no officer-involved shootings or categorical uses of force during the previous week. Year to date, we've had 22 officer-involved shootings in comparison to 26 this time last year, for a decrease of 15%. I want to report on 2 multidisciplinary investigative team, or MSIT, callouts that occurred last week. The first one was in 77th area on September 27th, 2024, at approximately 11:37 hours. A 211 Grand Theft Auto radio call was generated in the area of Buckingham and Martin Luther King Boulevard Jr. Boulevard in Southwest. The comments of the radio call indicated that a white box truck had been taken and a possible male Hispanic wearing light-colored clothing was hanging onto the truck while moving. Shortly thereafter, a second radio call was generated, this time in 77th, in the area of Vernon and Denker. The comments of the call indicated that a 211 Grand Theft Auto had just occurred. The vehicle was again described as a white box truck with a male Asian hanging onto the vehicle yelling for help. As officers began to search the area for the truck, they located the box truck facing eastbound at Florence from Broadway. A male Asian began running towards the police vehicle. The officers determined that the male and the white box truck were related to the radio call and made a U-turn in an attempt to stop the vehicle. Upon completing the U-turn, the officers lost sight of the vehicle and the victim. As the officers continued to search the area and located the vehicle driving south on Broadway with the victim hanging onto the vehicle, the officers activated their emergency equipment in order to catch up to the box truck, which continued south on Broadway, and then negotiated a left-hand turn eastbound 77th Street. As the officers turned onto 77th Street, they observed the victim fall from the moving vehicle and subsequently was run over by the box truck. The officers immediately stopped to render aid to the victim and advised other units over the air of the last direction of travel. Other units from 77th continued the pursuit of the stolen vehicle, which eventually terminated in the area of Normandy and Vernon. The suspect was taken into custody without incident. Unfortunately, the victim succumbed to his injuries he sustained when he fell from the vehicle. No officers or other community members were injured during this incident. Detectives from the MSIT team responded to the scene and are handling the investigation. The criminal investigation is being handled by Operation South Bureau Homicide. Our second MSIT call-out was in Wilshire and West LA on September 27th at approximately 21:54 hours. West Los Angeles Uniform Patrol Unit spotted a stolen vehicle being driven by a suspect. When the officers requested a backup and an airship and a supervisor as they began to follow the vehicle. A Wilshire Patrol unit that was in the area became the secondary unit of the following. Officers attempted to initiate a traffic stop. However, the vehicle failed to yield and a pursuit was initiated. The stolen vehicle entered a cul-de-sac, briefly stopped, reversed, ramming the police vehicle behind it. The officers continued their pursuit of the vehicle, with the suspect now wanted for assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer. As the pursuit ended when the suspect collided with an uninvolved motorist at the intersection of Venice and La Cienega, and the force of the collision caused the motorist vehicle to crash into an MTA bus, which fortunately had no passengers on board. The suspect was taken into custody without incident. The uninvolved motorist was transported to the hospital for treatment of a broken humerus. The officers who were intentionally rammed by the suspect were also taken to the hospital for complaint of pain and later released. No officers or other community members were injured during this incident. Detectives from the MSIT team are handling the investigation. You may have seen the MTA incident in which an individual was tragically shot and the bus driver taken hostage. On Wednesday, September 25th, at approximately 12:45 hours, officers from Los Angeles Police Department southeast area, responded to radio calls of a disturbance and a possible assault with a deadly weapon on an MTA bus near Manchester Boulevard in Figueroa. The bus driver, sensing danger, activated the panic alarm, notifying the bus operations center, which then quickly relayed vital information to our 911 operators, reporting that a man armed with a gun was on board. The officers tracked the bus and located it at 117th and Figueroa. At that point, the bus stopped. Southeast officers approached the bus using their public address system to communicate with the passengers. However, instead of complying, the bus began to slowly move away from the officers, prompting a pursuit. The chase lasted approximately an hour as officers followed the bus through Los Angeles into downtown. Recognizing a potential hostage situation, the officers developed a tactical plan and notified the SWAT team early and worked out a strategy to safely stop the bus. Officers deployed spike strips to disable the bus, whereupon the bus was stopped at Alameda and 6th. By then, the SWAT team officers had joined the pursuit and prepared for a possible hostage rescue. Once the bus had stopped, officers quickly disabled it to prevent any further movement. SWAT then used a diversionary device to safely board the bus, apprehending the suspect and rescuing the bus driver and one other passenger. Tragically, another passenger, Mr. Anthony Rivera, was found with multiple gunshot wounds, rushed to the hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. The bus driver and second passenger, who had been hiding in the back of the bus, were safely rescued. South Bureau Homicide Division has assumed responsibility for the incident. The suspect, 51-year-old Lamont Campbell, was arrested at scene and booked for murder. Yesterday, we attended a press conference with the LA County District Attorney, who's filed 12 felony counts against Mr. Campbell.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Could
This,
you
this kind of violence is unacceptable, and we will continue to work diligently to keep our community safe. I would like to extend my sincerest condolences on behalf of the LAPD to the family of Mr. Rivera, and the tragic loss is heartbreaking. Our thoughts are with them during this incredibly difficult time. But I'd also like to praise the actions of our police officers from Southeast, as well as our SWAT team and the bus driver for quick thinking and bravery that really helped bring this incident to a close without further loss of life. Next, I'll report on a multi-six shooting that was in the media on September 25th at approximately 15 hours. Officers from 77th Air responded to an assault with a deadly weapon near the area of 74th Street and Figueroa. Upon the officers' arrival, they located 6 people who had been shot. Preliminary investigation determined that 3 male suspects driving a 4-door black Chevy Malibu approached a group of 6 individuals, 5 females and 1 male, who were walking in the area. The suspects opened fire, striking all 6 victims. Los Angeles Fire Department quickly responded and transported all 6 victims to local hospitals, and thankfully all the victims are in stable condition. At this early stage in the investigation, we do not believe any of the 6 victims were intended targets. Although the incident occurred near a homeless encampment, we do not believe the motive was related to homelessness. At the scene, officers recovered 29 expended 9mm shell casings. Detectives from 77th are actively pursuing leads to help identify the suspects. Year to date, just as a report, year to date, September 28th, there have been 117 shootings in 77th area, which represents a decrease of 14.6%. I'll talk about the recent mansion vandalism that has also been in the news. In recent weeks, news coverage has highlighted several large abandoned mansions in Los Angeles that have been vandalized with graffiti and have generated numerous calls for service from the surrounding community regarding vandalism and trespassing. I want to ensure that we are doing everything possible to address the ongoing issue. 2 of these mansions, owned by the same individual, are located in North Hollywood and Hollywood areas. The senior lead officers in these areas have been working diligently to resolve the situation by coordinating with the Department of Buildings.
Excuse me, Chief. Ma'am, if you want to have a conversation, you can take it outside. Let the chief finish his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Department of Building Safety to secure.
Ma'am, this is your first and only warning for disrupting the meeting.
This
Chief,
is
please continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. This has included installing fencing and boarding up lower windows to prevent unauthorized entry. Additionally, efforts have been made to remove the graffiti, and as of last week, both properties have been cleaned. The properties are currently undergoing legal proceedings that hopefully will be resolved in the near future. The third property that was reported on yesterday involved a property in West Los Angeles. And again, the senior lead officers in West Los Angeles have met with the property owner's real estate agent, and similar precautions are being taken, including securing fencing. I wanted to also bring attention to a 7-Eleven flash robberies update. You've noticed that in the past several months, 7-Eleven has been the victim of several flash robberies involving juveniles on bikes. On September 26th and 29th, significant progress was made on the ongoing investigation into the 7-Eleven robberies we have recently seen on the news. On September 26th and 27th, detectives from the Commercial Crimes Division completed multiple meeting interviews with various news outlets regarding these crimes. Press releases have had an immediate impact, generating numerous tips from the public. Some examples, some key arrests. On September 26th, Organized Retail Crime Task Force responded to Northeast area where a parent had brought their juvenile child in who was involved in a flash robbery. The juvenile was booked for robbery under California Penal Code Section 211. On September 28th, another parent in Southwest area brought their child into the station. That juvenile was booked for robbery in connection with the 7-Eleven flash robberies. And on September 29th, a similar situation occurred in 77th, where the parent turned the child in, and that juvenile was also booked for robbery. Through interviews of the parents and Organized Retail Crime Task Force discovered that many of the juveniles involved are not from the neighborhoods where the crimes have occurred. The investigation is ongoing to identify additional suspects and the use of anonymous tips, as well as identifications of school police. More arrests are anticipated. And lastly, I'll go over crime for the week of September 28th. For the offense count for the 4-week period of September 1st through September 28th compared to the 4-week period of August 4th through August 31st. Combined persons and property crimes are down 7.9%. Person crimes are down 1.7%. Regarding our homicides, compared to 2023, the city has seen a year-to-date decrease of 6.6% in homicides. That represents 16. Compared to 2022, the city has seen a 27.9% decrease in homicides. That represents a total of 87. Citywide, of the 224 homicides year-to-date, 79 or 35% of those are gang-related. And for the comparison in 2023, 50% of the 241 homicides were gang-related. And in 2022, 54% of the homicides were gang-related. Gang-related homicides are down 33.1% year-to-date compared to 2023 and 52.4% compared to 2022. Victim shot analysis. Year-to-date, victim shot is down 14% compared to 2023, down 27% compared to 2022. For the past 4 weeks ending September 28th, there's been a decrease of 10% in victim shot. Aggravated assaults for the past 4 weeks ending September 28th, aggravated assaults are down 0.2% compared to the prior 4 weeks ending 8/31. Regarding robberies, for the past 4 weeks ending 9/28, robberies are down 4.4% compared to the prior 4 weeks ending September 31st. There have been 378 strong-arm robberies for the 4 weeks, and there have been 136 robberies with a firearm, or 21% of the robberies for the past 4 weeks. Firearms recovered is down 9% year-to-date through August 31st. Regarding our burglaries, for the past 4 weeks ending in 9/28, burglaries are down 9% compared to the prior 4 weeks. For the past 4 weeks, commercial burglaries are down 10%, and residential burglaries are down 8%. The areas of Encino and Brentwood are still seeing the successes of the deployment of Metropolitan Division as well as commercial crimes. And finally, with our regarding our personnel strength as of September 30th, 2024 is at 8,780. We are 47 above our sworn authorities of 8,733. Civilian staffing is at 2,626. We're 1 over on our civilian staffing authority of 2,625. And our reserve officer strength is at 378. That is my report.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or comments regarding the Chief's report? Vice President Shields?
Thank you, President Southers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. It's really, you started off with some very tragic incidences that started off with grand theft auto or auto thefts and led to some very unfortunate, situations with innocent victims being killed. And so it's tragic to hear that. I hope that the department will be doing more to ensure the safety of our streets. I want to also call out the MTA hijacking and how tragic of an incident that was, but very grateful for the men and women of Southeast and the SWAT team. And really, major thanks to the MTA operator who really, in such, most difficult of circumstances, kept his cool and was able to alert law enforcement. And really, his actions really should be commended for making a bad situation as best as it could be. Wanted to also thank you for the updates on the flash mob robberies. It is interesting to hear that parents themselves were active in getting their children to be held accountable for those and to face consequences. That's good to hear, and hopefully that will just deter them and lead them on the better path. I also wanted to, I think in news reports, also mention the fact that the Pico Robertson shooter, the person who shot at two Jewish people outside synagogues, was sentenced to 35 years in prison yesterday. Thank you to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's leadership, and also for all of the work that the department did to make sure that that person was held accountable. And I think now, of all times, we should be emphasizing the fact that there is no tolerance for hate crimes in the city of Los Angeles against anyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. Good morning. Chief, follow-up question on the three sets of parents or parents that turned in their son or daughters. Is there any connection to that? Was there some kind of uniform effort with those parents, or were they all separate?
They appear to be separate, but I do believe that with all the publicity that we use the media on the flash mobs, that the parents had seen that and decided that the right thing to do was to bring the child in. There's other people that are involved because these groups are fairly large, so we're still taking tips in, and hopefully we'll get more information regarding individuals that are engaging in the flash mob. And then I think with the publicity and the identification of people, then I think we'll hopefully see a decrease in this type of activity, especially when they realize that actually people are being identified and are arrested.
And in situations like this, or in cases like this, is there sort of an alternative approach when that happens to what occurs to the youth involved? So maybe referring them to a program or getting them and their parents some support so that they don't face potentially a legal consequence, but it's more of a restorative.
Yeah, that's definitely part of our protocol. We'll look at the youth and any criminal history. If not, sometimes referring them to services and that type of thing is more productive than actually putting them in the justice system. So all that will be worked into the investigation and our partnership with our district attorney and state attorney.
Thank you.
Chief, just to follow up on the ADW at 74th and Figueroa, where 6 people were shot, a little bit more in that location. I believe you mentioned that was a homeless encampment?
They had mentioned that there was a homeless encampment there, but they don't believe that was actually related or that was the intended target of the shooting. 77th is looking at video right now and still has some interviews to do. Right now, it doesn't look like it's gang related, so there's still a lot of questions as to why they were targeted, but 77th has been working on that and gathering other evidence to figure out what the motive is and follow up on vehicles that were seen in the area, hopefully on CCTV and things like that.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 2, public comment period. Madam Secretary, please call the first speaker.
First up, we have Andrew Grabner.
Report. The Chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the Chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the Chief takes. Regardless of how long the Chief takes, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. Once again, you're talking about crime being down, but for some reason you need more money. Why do you need more money if crime's down? It seems like crime's down, so maybe we need less of you. You get your $3 billion a day and you can't even keep the power fully up in the bathrooms over here. We have, but yeah, talk about the Metro incident. And one thing that was left out is how just incompetent, terrible the cops were. It took them over an hour to actually do anything. That was said in the Metro board meeting last Thursday. You left that out of the report here. So they aren't even good at whatever they're supposed to be doing. You also mentioned, this not even a solution. You also mentioned how you have no tolerance for hate crimes, even though you have tons of tolerance for hate crimes, and just stood by while well, you know, pro-Palestinian protesters are attacked. It also reminds me of, you remember the whole thing at Saticoy Elementary last year where the cops stood by and let a bunch of anti-LGBTQ bigots assault, attack, harass LGBTQ activists, the allies, just students at the school. They just went and helped the white supremacist fascists and such that just go around to every part of the county to do anti-LGBTQ protests. Just let them do whatever they want. But how dare the anti-LGBTQ activists protest them? They gotta be brutalized, and cops gotta stand around and do nothing while the anti-LGBTQ bigots assault an unhoused person. That was all at Saticoy Elementary, by the way. Okay, we have the consent agenda. Let's see. There's not a lot on the consent agenda today. There's only 5 items. We have, I gotta pull it up here. Let's see. We have internet crimes. We have $500,000 for an Allogy subscription or whatever the heck that is. We have $17.50 for the Teenage Indoctrination Cadet Program, so some cops can sexually assault some more teenage women. We got a huge vacation for Choi to go attend something in Huntington Beach. $1,100 for a 3-night hotel stay.
Next, we have Mona M.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Please listen to this true scenario. There's a confessional security check, a sec check. That equals a 12-year-old counseling a grown man. A sec check is because something went wrong in your life and you are trying to discover what you did currently or in a past life to make it happen. The prelude to this confessional are these words spoken to the grown man, and I quote, "We are about to begin an HCO confessional. While we cannot guarantee you that matters revealed in this list will be held forever secret, we can promise you faithfully that no part of it nor any answer you make here will be given to the police or the state. No Scientologist will ever bear witness against you in court." Here's some actual questions from this confessional. I quote, "Have you committed a crime? What crime? How, when, where? Give detail. Have you masturbated?" Remember, this is a child asking a grown man. "How, when, where? In detail. Have you eaten a human body? How, when, where? Give detail." Sadly, the child asking the grown man must know what these words mean. They have to define, explain, and show what the words mean during their training. Remember, this is grown men are told that these crimes will not be told to the police, and the grown man is locked in a room with just that child. All sessions are written about, taped, and videoed. Abuse such as this goes on daily behind the blue walls. Children and survivors of this are not allowed by Scientology doctrine to report it to the police. This doctrine and policy was recorded in court proceedings at the Masterson trial. I am requesting a meeting with the Major Crimes Unit to file an investigation for an aggregate abuse claim. I shouldn't have to make an OIG complaint for this response. Chief Cho, crime solving isn't going to wait for the new chief. Please give me contact info, and I yield back my time. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ha-San Tran.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hassan Tran. I am here today. Please help me put my name in U.S. government system, telling to them I'm here today. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Kenny.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I hear the police asking for more funds and more funds, but have you ever considered that the taxpayers' money is being wasted on over probably the 24 SWATs that y'all been called involving the Scientology protesters? That's a waste of funds, especially when it's being told to y'all that it's coming from a select few that continue to brag about it on their YouTube channel. Also, I don't see any kind of action being taken against Scientology for whatever reasons. People can't come out and run and leave Scientology like that. It's just not easy to escape a cult. They scared, they don't have nowhere to go. Scientology corrupts their mind thinking that they don't have anything outside that blue building. And to just sit there and hear about this and not do anything about it, but y'all waste time on coming to false, bogus calls that Scientology's making, wasting once again taxpayers' money for bogus false calls, making false arrests that's cost protesters thousands of dollars for attorneys. It's all the way down to corruption in the courtroom. It's not fair because somebody wants to speak out against a cult that they get what they call fair games, meaning they'll stalk down their family, harass their family through mail, whatever way they can to humiliate anybody that speaks out against Scientology. But y'all, once again, asking for more funds to come make false arrests and false SWATs against the people who are protesting. It seems one-sided, and I just don't see how nobody don't see that it's one-sided. The world is watching how corrupt LAPD has been treating the protesters of Scientology. Just because they can't say anything, it's going on in there. They're afraid. They don't have security around there just for the protesters. It's to make sure they don't run. Scientology is a cult. They're building tunnels. Nobody's saying anything. It's a tunnel boss and kids can't consent. Please open your eyes and help us. We need some kind of investigation into what's going on, even if it's stop harassing the protesters, because that's what's actually going on. Thank you. I yield my time.
Okay, next we have Mr. Herman.
Mr. Django and Mr. Inspector General, you gotta stop calling my fucking name on a card because you're putting me in danger of those fucking Scientology people. I don't need those fucking bitches up my ass with their Scientology bullshit. Fucking racist piece of shit, trash. So let's go into the foundations of money. How Fabian Garcia is not reporting what he's receiving in potential donations, and from what I heard, there's a possibility that he likes young men, but I'm not gonna say that on record, but that's an allegation I heard. Sorry about that. But again, we got the Los Angeles Cadet Program, and you know what I've always said about cadets, Mr. President, that we shouldn't be fucking children. Children are children. They're to be protected. They're little motherfucking angels to God. And God protects children, but at the same time, God destroys goddamn children. Ain't that irrelevant? Not. Because the truth is, God hates you, you're going to hell. Dumb motherfuckers. Keep your dick in your pants and leave children alone. Those are the consent items. And by the way, is Rasha still receiving her oil donations? I want to know. I want a donation list of what motherfucking assholes are donating money to rich bitch motherfucker cunt like you, when we know for a fact that Jose Weezer was getting donation money. We know Mitchell Englander was getting donation juju money. So there's something tricky about this, Dickie. And regarding the tragic events, I heard the vice president say, tragic events, that's not tragic. They're everyday motherfucking things happening in this world that are out of control. I'm dealing with crime, sir.
Excuse me. Please sit down with the sign or walk out.
I don't have a sign.
I'm not talking to you.
Oh, that's Ms. Rosha. She wants an accommodation. She can't
Put the
sit.
sign on the ground,
Yeah, I don't see a sign. She's cool like that.
as long as you're not blocking someone's view.
Sorry about that, Ms. Rosha.
Sir, please continue your public comment.
Motherfucker, yeah, I'm going to continue about the tragic events because your vice president is talking about all this fucking bullshit, but yet we got a fucking councilwoman, a fucking ramen noodle birria of that 4th district with those fucking mansions. Tear the fucking mansions down. Tear the fucking mansions down. We don't need that kind of crime
Please
in our
allow him
Hollywood
to finish his
community.
public comment.
We do not need.
Please allow him to finish his public
Why
comment.
the fuck I have to talk over this
Your
young
first
fucking
warning for
bitch when
disrupting
I'm
the
trying to
meeting.
repeat myself about the mansion crimes? We got to get rid of this shit. Tear them down, put a lien on the property, send the fucking property owners their liens on top of all the costs and charges that we motherfucking white niggers are paying for. We're tired of this shit. And by the way, when Blake Chow was in out there in Hollenbach, he goddamn know well what Weezer was doing behind closed doors, and I goddamn know fucking Weezer was doing it to me too. Fuck the little bitch, and I hope he does good in jail. Fuck you.
Next, we have Mike C.
Okay, good morning, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I don't generally have a problem with the police funding their operation, but under the Freedom of Information Act, the LAPD should be a little more forthcoming with who these donations are coming from. We can't have special interest groups steering public safety, and that's kind of what's going on. Speaking on hate crimes, how about our mayor spearheading the illegal tearing down of nearly 100-year-old Catholic statue and the theft of our park? Well, the LAPD sat back and didn't do anything. I probably never told them to do nothing. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then let's not just hope, but use our voices and our First Amendment rights to convey to Mayor Bass that choosing the chief of police, she must use meritocracy as the only criteria if she expects to convey any level of trust in her leadership. Anything less will just validate the opinion that Mayor Bass is ineffective and, dare I say, a DEI hire, which we already know she is. And that's the prevailing opinion anyway. And what I will use to prove Mayor Bass is she's extremely partisan, and lost a direct involvement in the scourge of presentism going on. Proof that she had that statue torn down or was okay with it, just like tearing down all the statues all over the country of different political leaders they don't like. Since 2015, they've been doing it. 10 years of this Marxist juggernaut that seems to be getting steam here in California. The source being the CCP and the Maoist proxies in our government, local and state, in our one-party rule state of California. I mean, one of the worst places to be seems to be Los Angeles. I have family that live in other states, and they look at our state and they go, "What's going on with California?" And I go, "Hey, don't worry, it's the model for your state. Get ready for it." They know it is. California's the model for all of the disasters going on in our country. We have a disaster of a governor, a disaster mayor. And we look at all the other opportunities going on here for police chief. Well, we're guaranteed to get a DEI for that one. I mean, what's going on with this place? Bunch of crazy people. Anyway, I yield my time.
Next, we have Megan.
I'm sorry, Southers. You are a coward. You are a coward. I watched you have Matios Kadan escorted out of the community meeting in the spring because he was talking about your Islamophobia and your part in the decision to remove the USC valedictorian because she was Muslim. You escorted him out for that because he was off topic. But this guy gets up here and calls Rasha a cunt, and that's super on topic. I've also watched her interrupt people to defend you and tell them to be quiet and tell them that they're off topic. And you don't do shit. You're a coward. So today you're going to talk about whether or not the killing of Earl Collier was in policy. I watched the critical incident video. So the first footage you show is of Earl in the middle of the street. It's clear that he's not well. He's stumbling around. He's disoriented. He's in the middle of the street. And then we see him try to open the car door of a car leaving the intersection. And I think that showing that specific clip was on purpose to reinforce the idea that Earl was this dangerous black man who would have hurt someone had you not shot him. I'm curious to know what other camera footage would show of Earl before the incident, and if it would give a more complete and unbiased view of his condition. He then takes a kitchen knife out of his pocket and starts stumbling down the street. Then the lady on the video narrates the entire incident to tell you how to think about it before we're actually shown it. And she says, officers approached Collier and began giving him verbal commands to drop the knife. And now that's a hell of a lot calmer than what they actually did, which was to roll up on him with multiple squad cars and get out, guns drawn, shouting at him to drop the knife. I wonder why that further confused and disoriented, and I wonder why he started running. Okay, then the broad says, in an effort to de-escalate the situation, officers discharged two 40-millimeter less lethal foam projectile rounds at him, which were ineffective. What a fucking sentence that is. First, to suggest that shooting something at someone can somehow de-escalate a situation, and then that last part of the sentence, which were ineffective, really, really old racist trope there, right? It kind of gives the impression Earl's unstoppable, out of control, just straight out of the white supremacy handbook. Then it describes him as running east towards pedestrians, again giving the impression he was like charging at people to stab them, when the footage clearly shows a disoriented man scared and fleeing for his life. And then some officers cut him off. He's running. You can see the look on his face. They're yelling at him, and then they shoot him, and they call that charging at them. He was not charging at them. He was having a mental health crisis. He was confused. He didn't know what to do. Nowhere in that video did anybody say, do you need help? Do you need assistance? At any point.
Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lee.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first I want to thank Blake for his report. It was very good. He does a good job. I also want to support all the donations on the agenda items. Plus, Blake, as acting chief right now, you have the authority to give recommendations to the Board of Rights to save the jobs for the captain and lieutenant in question. And I think Dominic is still a pain in my butt. He does not deserve to retire. He needs to be fired. He's very disappointing. He needs to find his big boy pants. And with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Next, we have Raul Macias.
Good morning, Assistant Chief Chow and Commissioners. As you well know, I'm a big fan of Robert Kennedy, and he said the following: every society gets the kind of criminal it deserves. What is equally true is that every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists on. Ladies and gentlemen, the Northeast Division is a disgrace to law enforcement. I want the firings of the following two gentlemen. That's Officer Cortez, who's a thug, okay, and also the so-called, this guy, I guess he's running MAC, his name is Matthew Eddy. He lied in this email, and I'll just read briefly. Good morning, as mentioned before in my previous email, that is a lie. He's never contacted me. I researched your allegations. Can I name my landlady who's being abused? Can I name her name? Can I say her name? Okay, I'll just say landlady. I researched your allegations of abuse involving your landlady, and it appears the LAPD, what a joke, and Adult Protective Services have already investigated these claims on several occasions. That is a damn lie. I'm the one who sent them over there to the house to interview my landlady. those jackasses came in there, and I was in the bedroom. I said, hey, you gonna interview me? You gonna interview Mike Moya, who's probably behind this, who works for mental health, who set up this lady because she wanted to kick him out of the house? No. They asked my landlady, are you okay? Fine. Good night. We're gonna close the case. That's what they did. Okay? I want this bastard fired, Matthew Eddy. I've sent him follow-up information. On Wednesday, the 25th, my landlady disappeared for 4 days, and her goddamn daughters wouldn't tell me where she was. The following day, the 26th, I had the LAPD come out, the Keystone Cops, and that's Cortez. I want him fired because when he first showed up, he has that strobe right in my face. Okay? I said, oh, Cortez. Yeah. I said, you thug. Okay, I'm gonna report you to the commission what you're doing, pal. He says, I want a wellness check. I want you to talk to Soyon, the daughter of my landlady, and know where the fuck she is. Where did she go? Well, she jumped in the car and took off for 4 days. When she returned on Saturday, she told me nothing. I said, where were you, ma'am? I detailed her Venza. I found a number belonging to a nefarious sounding black woman up in Oregon. She sounded like a madam. She had her on the front burner right there. When I was detailing, I said, who the hell is this? I called her and says, listen, lady, how the hell are you affiliated with my landlady? You sound like a hooker, man. Who are you? She slammed the phone on me. She refused to answer. I gave that number to Eddie. That jackass doesn't even call me back. Okay? What Cortez did is a disgrace to law enforcement. He had me mentally evaluated. Can you believe this shit? He got more smart. Is that these two clowns that came out, those Chicanos? Do you want to hurt yourself, Ro? You idiot. I want you to...
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Steve Riley.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Let me repeat that. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. That is a quote from Aldous Huxley, author of the book Brave New World. What we need is a brave new chief. Where is the chief? Well, we're not told new chief by the mayor that we would have a chief by the end of the month. This is October 1st. Okay, that's not inspiring confidence. If you say something, mean it and do it. So we are waiting anxiously for a new chief, and we need a brave new chief. Now, what do the police commission, Mayor Bass, Vice President Kamala Harris, the border czar, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, and Attorney General Merrick Garland have in common? They don't enforce the rule of law, boundaries or borders. And that is a problem. When you don't enforce the law, you get more crime. When there are no consequences for crime, you get more crime. Now, Chief Chow reported that property crime is down 7.5%. That's reported property crime, reported. And let's go back to Prop 47, the law, because what Prop 47 did, what Prop 57 AB 109 did, was basically, what did it do? It made theft rampant. Now, Prop 47 was sold to the public as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. Sounds good, doesn't it? Who could be against safe neighborhoods and schools? Prop 47 is designed to ensure that prison spending is focused on offenders who commit violent crimes like rape and child molestation. The savings from prison population reductions will be invested in crime prevention programs. Where are those crime prevention programs? Can anyone tell me? Have they prevented crime? The answer is no. Now, these things have real consequences. Do you know, breaking news here, breaking news. Macy's on 7th Street in downtown Los Angeles will be closing. Target will be closing. And do you know why? Because of rampant theft. They cannot stop the tide of theft. And why? Because of Prop 47, who was brought to you by Attorney General Kamala Harris, who put the title on that proposition, misleading the public and lying about what it actually would do. So now you can go into a store and steal up to close to $1,000, and there are no penalties, no consequences. Before it was $400. Arrests were actually made. There's petty theft with a prior, 666 of the Penal Code. Look it up. Okay, so we now have a society, a city, and a state where there are no consequences for theft, businesses will be closing, people will be losing their jobs, and people will not be able to go shopping in those areas. Something has to be done. God bless the LAPD.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jamie Cusick.
Okay, first I'll address closed session item A1. An off-duty cop saw someone outside his house on a security camera who was wearing a mask. He came out of his house and shot at this unidentified person. Thank God they were able to get in their vehicle and escape, and thank God they remain unidentified, because if they weren't, I'm sure they would have been arrested. Their crimes would have been for being outside of a house and for wearing a mask. They are alive only because this officer was too incompetent to hit them when he shot at them. Okay, moving on to closed session item A2, the attempted murder of Earl Collier. As Megan so effectively spelled out just now for you buffoons, the body cam footage captured by your own department tells a clear story of a man in a mental health crisis who was kettled, hunted, and shot down like the animal that these racist, cowardly motherfuckers perceived him to be from the moment before they were called to the scene. For most of the footage shot in the interior of one of the cop cars, there's a message that says, "No audio captured during 2-minute buffer period." How fascinating! With $8 million to spend every day, somehow LAPD's audio on their body camera footage requires 2 minutes to buffer. I'm sure that those 2 minutes were full of racist, violent invective directed at Mr. Collier. I think that as Megan so clearly elucidated, body camera footage is the idea of body cams themselves. It's worse than a waste of money. It's a way to retroactively validate all of the actions taken by LAPD by tampering with the footage. The cops were called to the scene about Mr. Collier on a 4:15, disturbing the peace. It's the cops, of course, who can be seen as the people who are clearly disturbing the peace while Mr. Collier is walking down the road in a mental health crisis. It really begs the question what peace he might be disturbing. This part of downtown, 7th and Broadway, is patrolled constantly by LAPD. There's no peace there to disturb. It is a site of colonization and of violence. It is a militarized zone, a battleground on which LAPD serves the interests of white wealth and white property by terrorizing poor and unhoused folks and people of color. I want to end by just reading from Earl's mother's GoFundMe. Hello, my name is Sharon Revels. As a disabled mother relying on Social Security benefits, I am at my wit's end financially.
Thank you.
Next, we
Madam
have Bob
Secretary,
Minton.
please call the next speaker. Your public comment time has expired. Step away from the podium. Your public comment time has expired. Step away from the podium. Thank you.
Bob
Good
Minton, you're on.
Good morning, board. Are you able to hear me?
Good morning. Yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Henry Marini, and I have been one of the critics of Scientology publicly. I have come before this board before, and I am here again to plead with this board, frankly, for my life and for the life of another public critic of Scientology. His name is Solomon Sassoon. He's a child. He has been repeatedly sexually stalked, harassed, and outright threatened violence upon by a known Scientologist. And not only that, but a Scientologist who specifically does not have any sort of remorse when making sexual stalking threats against a minor. Anthony D'Amato Jr. has a restraining order against him. He repeatedly has been directly linked as being one of the people explicitly calling these swatting calls on any public critic of Scientology. I've had guns pointed at me. I come to you from the great state of New York when I was protesting Scientology in the city of Buffalo, New York, where Scientology has one of their main centers. Officers responded to code 3. About 10 minutes later, another gentleman here in Los Angeles who was protesting Scientology by the name of Scott Hochstetter, you'll know his YouTube channel as DOA, Defender of Ants. He was swatted about 5 times. He too had guns pointed at him. We know who the swatter is. Scientology is a gang. They are a violent criminal gang unit. They will stop at nothing to harass, intimidate, and outright issue death threats upon anybody that dares speak out publicly. I've had my family be issued death threats, people planning to kill or eat my dog. In addition, Solomon and his family continue to get threats of rape, raping a child, raping his mother, blowing up his house, swatting his house. And I'm just not sure, when this board will finally take up action against the clear violence that Scientology is enacting upon any of its public critics. I'm not sure if that day might come when a child's blood is on your hands, when an entire family in New York is killed for simply having the audacity to publicly exercise their First Amendment right to speak out against Scientology. I just hope it doesn't get to that point. But you have a Scientologist actively threatening to rape a child and calling swatting calls. It's Scientology. They are a vicious criminal gang, and you need to take action. Protect the protesters and stop this nonsense. Stop the bloodshed. You don't want a child's blood on your hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Hamid Khan.
I wanted to talk about a couple things. One is that when we walked in, Blake Chow was giving all the crime reports. And it's reminiscent and constantly a reminder that how and the frequency of these and what's the get down and what's the setup. Because about a year ago, the big thing, or a year and a half ago, was the real-time crime center being set up and advanced and more money invested in record management systems. Then getting about 10,000 cameras, getting all the retail shops and all of that. But the goal was really to go after Prop 47. It was to create this specter of violence and people just running wild. And yes, things were going on, but things have always been going on, nothing special about it. However, it was really a conspiracy to then uplift Prop 36 to completely gut anything. This was through a Supreme Court decision to reduce prison population back in 2012, 2013, that Prop 47. And we've seen every year changes that were going on because it saved hundreds of millions of dollars, that how money was being diverted. But that's how this whole sensationalism of policing is set up to go after these policy programs. And as we've got to stay vigilant, because the same thing is happening, and I don't know if this commission even has a clue. What we were talking about is the continuation of what is now known over the last 4 years of data-informed, community-focused policing, which came immediately in the aftermath of our fight against predictive policing and dismantling Operation Laser and PredPol. But now, as we are getting all the documents, the same picture is emerging. The same style of policing where, you will hear terms like ACCICs and NEAs, neighborhood engagement areas, but all under the guise of SARA projects, which is scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. So all that to say that this smoke and mirror and this whole expansion of policing with just rebranding the same old tired programs, from broken windows to predictive policing to SARA operations to the NEAs, go to the same thing. That the same people are being targeted, the same young people are being stopped, the same FI cards are being filed, now with their social security, their social media handles, and the same operation, just as chronic offender program used to be, is very much in operation as well. So we continue to keep an eye on that, and we continue to expose it, and yes, we continue to organize, but we're gonna have to stay vigilant in that and come back, because that's really our fight, and it's a deep fight, and we've got to dismantle this data-informed, community-focused policing bullshit.
Next, we have Serge. Serge, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I stand before you today as someone who was stolen by being child trafficked by Scientology from another country, whose innocence was shattered by a system that left kids who could not consent to be role-playing being slaves for Scientology adults who pay for that and get tax write-offs for helping themselves to kids being forced to be slaves. Who of you here in this board wants to defend forcing a child to be role-playing being a child slave is legal? The 13th Amendment of the Constitution you all swore to uphold makes clear that slavery was abolished. Imagine you at the LAPD uphold the right for kids to be used as slaves. Y'all made child slavery legal again. Adults can consent to be slaves if they are getting off on that. No one can help them. It's called consent. No kid can consent to that, period. Who of you wants to pitch to us the kids that were brought from another country to be used as slaves? We're having a religious experience for ourselves. It's called we cannot consent to be used on that role. What is really worse is that the very people tasked with upholding the law with protecting vulnerable kids who cannot defend themselves when exposed to these extreme role plays, so-called Scientology audits, where they are indefensibly subjugated and dehumanized, which no kid could ever consent to, while all you cash Scientology checks to protect those adults, claiming that you're truly pressed about them having a so-called freedom of religion. Felonies and religion are not words that can be interchangeable, are they? Why were our passports as children locked up by Scientology adults? Was that part of practicing a religion, or is that textbook child trafficking a felony? Which one is it? Today, the LAPD stands rightfully accused of willfully turning a blind eye to the systemic child trafficking of kids, which is a felony, not a religious experience for any child. Those felonies that are happening as we speak right now include but are not limited to blaming the kids for getting raped, a word we were not even allowed to use inside the Scientology hotels. Instead, as kids, we were groomed to call it out-to-D, a euphemism to sanitize the criminal acts that Scientology video records and transcribes, all tantamount to obstruction of justice. Yet the LAPD seems fine on obstructing criminal investigations, outsourcing those to foreign kids such as myself who were groomed to do that starting at age 12, groomed to do that with teddy bears and dolls. That is how they normalized it, FYI. You are all paid by the public, sworn to observe and protect. But where were you when we were as kids being abused with full impunity? Where were the LAPD officers who should have been there to stop it? Instead, you choose to protect the corrupt, powerful, consenting adult Scientology abusers that are sycophants and paid proteges of convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard, who, breaking news, is not an American-bred god. He's a convicted felon. You are all part of a system that has enabled them. The reality is this: your paychecks today come from the same people you neglected to protect. You took an oath to serve them, protect the people, but instead you serve the interests of those who have silenced us for years so they can keep their unfeathered access racketeering scheme, which is all fully illegal. And as of today, fully state-sponsored by the state of California. Even our 7th grade education, which is all we got given the fact that we were trafficked, can categorically denounce this exact illegal abomination. We read the law. Who is actually on?
Okay, next we have Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster, Alito, on this one.
We have not had any officer-involved shootings or categorical uses of force in the prior weeks.
Thank you. That's awesome. So, Earl Collier today, it says that he was hit with less lethal, but he could have been hit with the net gun that I suggested for 6 years, and he would still be alive, and you wouldn't have killed another person, but you didn't listen to me, so you're going down, you're burning. So on June 19th, 2018, not President, but Vice President Johnson was speaking about the flamboyant use of rifles. And then Soboroff chimes in. But the numbers you're going to hear, 213 rounds in 2017 and only 13 rounds in 2016, 73 in 2014, and then 7 in 2005. And this led to the Valentina Peralta getting killed. Jones didn't get prosecuted, didn't listen to command staff either. But here is Vice President Johnson. Here he is sounding the alarm. No one heeded the warning.
The use of using our rifles skyrocketed in 2017. There were 213 rounds. There were 213 rounds fired from rifles in 2017. That number was 13 in 2016 and 73 in 2014. 7 in 2005. I can't even put a percentage on that increase. Well, I think we also have to revisit our policy on when using a rifle is appropriate. And lastly, there were 9 incidences in 2017 where there were more than 4 shooters in an officer-involved shooting. He raises issues about command and control and whether or not we are properly determining who necessarily needs to be shooting.
Yeah, and this may have led to Valentina Peralta being killed. Everything he said here came to fruition. Who are you listening to? That's why I keep telling you, you have to listen to me. I'm not the most powerful man in the world, even though I say I am. I'm trying to be. And I would have saved the life of these people, and then you wouldn't look like a bunch of dumb jerks. That's what I'm trying to get you out of this problem. I have the ability to get you out of this problem, but you won't listen to me. Jackie Lacey. Jackie Layton, a name you haven't heard much, huh? Is she better than Gascon? Right? So, need a beat down? You got to really think about this. If you really did give, everybody that gave to this Leon guy needs a beat down. Because they were 2 years old. The whole town, the whole district that donates to him needs a beat down. Does that sound right? That doesn't sound right either, does it? Right. He's a jerk.
Next, we have
Thank you.
Susan Rocha.
My name is Susan Rocha, and I live in Northeast. This message is especially for the city attorney's office. We need to protect First Amendment for nonviolent protesters. That includes me standing on the corner protesting the noisy Divine Savior Catholic Church, which they have refused to cite, to do anything about. Bullhorns, blasting off-key tape recordings in my house 10 times every single day. Even though there's no church services and not a soul around, you want to continue that for the last, 15 or so years? They would do nothing about it. We have California Penal Code 415. We have city laws. But no, it's okay to disturb my peace and quiet. But if I disturb theirs, oh boy, I'm ready to be arrested. You know what? This church, Divine Savior, has taken me to court 2 times. 2 times they've lost. The second time, did you accuse me of a crime that never happened? And they prosecuted me, even though they had 3 witnesses, including the priest, Albert Pragasam, who never saw anything. 3 people, including the priest, that they put on a stand because they thought I wouldn't fight them, who never saw anything, but they prosecuted anyway. That's how powerful the Catholic Church is. Well, 12 people saw my side and saw the truth, not guilty. But that's cruel to put me through the hell of a trial for something that never happened, just to shut a little old woman up that sits on the corner with a goddamn sign. That's pretty sick that the prosecutor would do that, and you don't do anything about it. And now I'm fighting for my 4th appeal for factually innocent because not guilty is not good enough. I want more. I want factually innocent, but you keep fighting me on my factually innocent case. Don't you have any morals? These people lied. I have proof they lied, and you want to keep fighting me on my factually innocent case, which is on my 4th appeal, because I'm not going to stop. I don't care what they say. I'm not going to stop. I'll keep taking that to the next court and the next court, because that's not right that they can lie and get away with it. I want factually innocent. Stop fighting on my case. Gabriella Taylor, prosecutor Gabriella Taylor at Northeast, why would she prosecute when she ain't got 1 witness? When she ain't got nobody to sign anything because it never happened. Why? Because she could please her priest? Is that why? Is she going to get a special seat in heaven for it? Is that why? That's cruel. That's cruel. The Catholic Church will still get their way. to prosecute and do whatever the crap they want, just like they did with the little boys, and they got away with that for all those years. They still, in this city, prosecute for them for no reason. And you're doing the same thing with the protesters from the Scientology that are non-violent. And you're falsely accusing them of crimes that they haven't done. The same crimes they accuse me of. And that's got to stop because we deserve First Amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. President, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll now move on to item number 3, consent agenda items. We have items 3A through E. I'd like to pull B. Vice President Shields, are there any items you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia, any items you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Thank you. With that, having heard that, I'd like to move that we adopt the recommendation for board action for items 3A, C, D, and E. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 3B, it's the department's report, $500,000 for training division. Captain Oftenberg, good morning. And if you would, just introduce your officers when you're seated. Take your time.
Good morning.
There you go.
Good morning, Commission, Chief, Executive Director, Inspector General, City Attorney. These are my officers for our leadership unit. This is Sergeant Vic Hooper, and this is Officer Dan Rodriguez, I'm sorry. They run our leadership unit, and they have received a grant for our LAPD University online application. It's $500,000, $250,000 is actually a tax deductible for the previous years, and an additional $250,000 is for this year. It currently runs 6 of our post accredited classes or courses. We have run about 45,000 courses to date. It is also, well, I'll let you guys get more into it, but we also are doing a virtual library with them. But I will let you guys discuss it.
So within the LAPD University, we have 6 post-approved courses, and then, sorry, can you hear me? And then in the future of the LAPD University, we're building we're referencing the LAPD Leadership Library, which will be an online library so that we can share knowledge amongst our department and future leadership development, as well as to improve upon our local area network system, where it's difficult to search for like special orders, manual sections, things to that effect. And so we'll place that into the pocket of every officer where they can actually search those policies, procedures, and we can utilize push notifications to send them an update when there's a new update. For example, Directive 16 is now obsolete. We have tactical contents number 7, so officers can be made aware of that by a notification to their mobile device. In addition to that, we're looking at building a grant tracking system to help us look for further funding because it was built upon a grant. So the initial inception of the LAPD University started with a distance learning grant program through POST, an additional grant through the DOJ CRP, and as well as an IACP grant. And so that's how we were able to build the LAPD leadership program, or LAPD University, and continue it running up until this point. And for the last 2 years, we had not been able to pay for that bill. And so the Los Angeles Police Foundation was charitable enough to say, we'll allow 1 year to be waived, and the company agreed to say, we'll take a charitable donation or a donation of services in kind, and then they'll pay for the current year that we're in now. And then we submitted for 2025 to be actually paid for by the budget.
Thank you. You actually answered my first question, which was the time frame for the $500,000 allocation. So thank you. I just have just some question and just some clarification here. So you mentioned that I looked at the, if you will, syllabus for the training, and I wanted to understand why there's no recurring training, at least according to what I read, for subjects such as implicit bias, leadership, or organizational wellness. It seems we have some items that are recurring, these are not. I just wanted to know if there's a reason for that.
The implicit bias course was just brought up and reapproved by POST. We just modified it and made it compliant, and it, as of, I believe it was a month and a half to 2 months ago, it is back up and running, and is running currently on LAPD, sir.
And did we mention the MHIT course?
we're working on?
No, so we're also building a mental health intervention training for investigators. And so that will not only benefit the LAPD, but that's built through an IACP grant, and we'll be able to push that out nationwide. So the courses actually run concurrently. So within Post, we run the courses every month when they're live. So we're in a modification cycle right now. So every Post-approved course, every 2 years has to go through modification, in which Post audits the course and then allows us to put it back up. So we have the leadership core development and the implicit bias that are up right now, and the additional courses are in modification. And so as we get them approved, then we place them back up online. So generally what happens is officers would say they need their PSP and CPT credit, so their perishable skills and continued professional training credit, and that's a biannual schedule, so every 2 years. So routinely, officers would take that course and then receive credit, and that helps count towards the 24, which is mandated by Senate Bill 2, and they would do that every 2-year cycle.
Officer, you're good. You get to my next question before I ask it. So you've answered the question, but I did have one more item on the mental health intervention training for investigators. What's the ETA for that that expansion plan to be implemented?
So we're hopeful now that we'll be able to build that by the beginning of next year. So they wanted to roll it out, our MEU unit wanted to roll out the in-person first, kind of like a beta test to see how the content would work and then we would go forward. We actually had some communication of saying, listen, the new generation and the way that people absorb content is not 45 to hour-long videos. It's much shorter. And so what we're trying to do is take the content that they deliver in person and make it into smaller bites of short videos that are 5 minutes or less, and then include supporting documentation, as well as the ability for the learner to start and stop the content whenever they want and really, really dig into it, as opposed to long 1-hour blocks of it. So we're building that now, and we're hopeful to have that up by the beginning of next year.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Vice President Shields.
Yes, thank you for pulling this one because I was curious about this. How do we, do you judge the effectiveness of these trainings in terms of, how well certain modules do, how well certain speakers do? And so how do we actually look at whether they're effective or not?
So the validation of training is done by an actual assessment at the end of the course, some of which have it during the content of the course. And then essentially we make like a question bank. So for example, you say you have 15 questions and then it'll rotate through 5 questions at a time so that the officers don't get the same exact set of questions. And so that's kind of our efficacy, is to say, can they answer the questions correctly and then move forward? So they have to be able to answer the questions correctly. They have to complete all content to be able to receive credit.
Got it. Because I've done traffic school before, and it can you can just check, and then guess and see. Versus like, is there anything that's actually like? And I do see the benefit of like these online learnings to be able to do it kind of on the go and from your mobile device or other things. But I also want to make sure, especially when we're dealing with kind of critical trainings, that the officers are also getting a potential of actually hands-on training. So this is just one component of the training that they would receive, right?
Yes, ma'am. Speaking of hands-on, regarding the use of force course, we're currently placing that up in a hybrid format, whereas officers will receive online training and then immediately after that, or at their convenience, they have to go through a live scenario with a live instructor. So it combines both. They have their prerequisites they have to meet with online training, and then they have to verify it in a live format.
Great. And I actually just recently attended the active bystander training, which I thought was phenomenal. And hopefully that, I don't know if, again, like implicit bias, I could imagine different trainers, you can leave with different input. And sometimes it's particularly implicit bias. I would say a bad trainer can leave a worse view than had you not taken the class altogether. How do we do quality control of our instructors and actually make sure that whatever content we are providing is kind of like the best in class?
I would say that's to our benefit, specifically within the LAPD University, because we have the consistency of the same presentation being presented every single time, because it has been built in that way. So we don't have the difference of this instructor today got stuck in traffic, had a bad morning, had an argument with their spouse, and now they're going to deliver content with whatever additional things they have going on in life. We have curated content and created short video, and the presentation of it is consistent every single time.
Thank you. And I may test out some of the trainings, so I'd like to see the roster as well, but thank you.
course.
And you mentioned the College of the Canyons credit as well, correct?
I did not. So what we did is, at the inception of the program, myself and my previous OIC, we got certified through College of the Canyons so that we can receive reimbursement funding. And so every single course on the LAPD University is on the College of the Canyons roster as well. And so when we complete the training, we validate it, we submit it to Post. It's also submitted through College of the Canyons for reimbursement. So a small portion of those training hours, which is in excess of 250,000 hours completed to date, that gets reimbursed through College of the Canyons to then generate funding for the RTF and all the other training ventures that we need to do within the department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, no question.
Well, thank you. Obviously, a lot of planning and organization went into this proposal, and it looks like the program's running very, very well. So just an excellent report, just a couple of things we needed to clarify, and thank you for the good work. With that, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action for item 3B. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to agenda item number 4, regular agenda items. We have a verbal presentation, full briefing for Records Identification Division. Morning. The floor is
Good morning,
yours.
Commissioners, Chief, and other distinguished guests up on the panel. I am Police Administrator Elena Nihoa Asukan. I am the Commanding Officer of Records and Identification Division. I have next to me my Assistant Commanding Officer, Senior Management Analyst 2, Charles Shivers. We are very honored and excited to be here today to share a little bit about Records and Identification Division. Of course, the LAPD acronym being R&I, so if you hear us utilizing some acronyms here. R&I is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day operation. We are one of the only all-civilian commands primarily made up of clerical employees, from entry-level administrative clerks, senior administrative clerks, principal clerk please, chief clerk please, and our technical side of the house, our fingerprint identification experts. The work that the staff of R&I does is phenomenal. We do a lot with little resources. We support our sworn officers out in the field, our custody services division jails, as well as Angelenos and other government agencies requesting various reports. Unfortunately, with the city of Los Angeles prioritized critical hiring, staffing within R&I has been severely challenging, and deployment levels are at an all-time low and at times difficult to maintain our 24/7 operation. However, my leadership team and I have been working diligently to think outside of the box and overcome these deployment concerns and shortfalls by partnering with our Office of Operations and the geographic areas and looking towards automation and automating the processes utilizing the department's new record management system and designing additional modules to help R&I. If I could, Mr. Shivers and I would like to share a little bit more about R&I and what we do.
Thank you. So there are 5 sections within the Records Identification Division that support not only department employees, other government agencies, and community members. First one we'll deal with will be the vehicle warrant section. The vehicle warrant section takes calls from officers and completes data entry regarding vehicles such as stolen, recovered, private towed, repossessions, and firearms. Employees also respond to various teletypes, warrants, and restraining orders. And although VWS faces a 37% vacancy rate in the clerical series, we've been able to overcome the low deployment challenges through our strategic resource allocation and looking towards partnerships and automation. For instance, we've been able to maximize our deployment by offering overtime to prior employees to assist bringing down the response times. Additionally, we're also looking to partner with other areas in the Office of Operations to possibly fill gaps with the express intent to bring down the call wait times.
We also have our criminal history section, which supports custody services divisions or the jails with any changes to booking entries. Additionally, criminal history section inputs all the sex offender registrants into the state's database and works very closely with the department's registration enforcement and compliance team, or our REACT coordinators. With the implementation of the new record management system, a module is being developed to allow Custody Services Division to directly input or change entries into the LA County's Automated Justice Information System, or AGIS, to update booking records related to the release of suspects. Pending successful implementation of this new module, CHS personnel could be redeployed to other 24/7 operations within R&I. We also have our technical side of R&I, which is our criminal identification section, which includes the fingerprint identification experts who complete all the 10-print fingerprint cards and responds to hospitals. The fingerprint identification experts also perform fingerprint comparisons to verify an individual is who they claim. With the city's prioritized critical hiring, we've recently been approved to hire 2 fingerprint identification experts, which we are excited to bring on board within the next few weeks.
All right. The last 2 sections are going to deal with the report services section, community member, and report services section, outside agency. On the screen right now, you see the community member. These 2 sections respond to all requests for crime, traffic, and arrest reports from community members, as well as other various outside government agencies. Additionally, these sections are responsible for scanning all reports into the department's digital repository known as the Integrated Crime and Arrest Record System, ICARS. With the shortfalls in staffing, there are significant backlogs in responding to report requests. However, one solution is to assist with the shortage is to add additional modules to the record management system, RMS, to assist with locating the reports. And it's expected that the department will be paperless with the RMS, thus eliminating the need to scan reports.
So that is just a brief overview of records and identification. We are extremely thankful for this opportunity to share about the phenomenal men and women of records and identification and all that the work that they do on a daily basis, 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year to help serve the city of Los Angeles. With our deployment and personnel shortfalls, the R&I leadership team continually look for solutions to help us respond more efficiently and more timely. We thank you for this opportunity to share about R&I, and we are open to any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much. And I know I speak for my colleagues when I say that we also thank you for your 24/7 service. Everyone up there does an incredible job. I do have a couple of questions and some clarification. So, as you mentioned, it's 24/7, and I want to understand, is RMS going to now address the issue that we've got hard copies from divisions being driven to this location, as I understand it, on a daily basis? Is that going to alleviate that?
Absolutely. With the new records management system, it is automating all of the reports. So all reports will be stored in the department's storage system, and they're all going to be paperless. So probably within the next 5 years, you'll see the transition that we, being R&I, will no longer be receiving hard copies of paper reports that we need to scan. It will all be digitized already in the system. And so that will help alleviate at least that one part of scanning all current paper reports.
That's promising, but is there anything we can do as a commission to shorten that time frame to less than half a decade?
Of automating, or what do you mean?
The fact that no one will have to drive paper to this building to be input.
So
And if you don't know, it's okay. It's just that a 5-year timeline for us is past the Olympics. We'd like to.
Yes. So, as far as driving documents down, a lot of it is done electronically. So we do receive a lot of the reports, whether it be electronically or, it would be physical. But unfortunately, sir, no, I can't say that in the interim or this near future, it is all with paper, and it has to be delivered to R&I.
But Commissioner, let me, what I'll do is I'll talk to Chief McMahon. There's a timeline for the automation. Some is pushed out a little further, some a little closer. They're trying to get everything automated right now, but I'll double check on that timeline and see if there's to drive paper to this building seems like so antiquated.
Yes, agreed.
So I'll check with them.
Thank you. And again, you've got the same recruitment and retention problems that the entire department and the entire country has. I'm wondering, first of all, I'd like to know, in those efforts, are you part of recruitment as it relates to the entire department? When there are career fairs, are you at the table as well for people who might want to be sworn and people who might want to work in R&I?
So, yes, sir, we have been invited to some civilian career fairs, to look at other options other than just police officer. Unfortunately, with the city's priority critical hiring, those opportunities have not been made available on the civilian side, except for those that are in the safety classifications, such as your police service representatives, detention officers, and property officers. But the clerical side, we have not been invited to those events in the last year, but only because of the prioritized critical hiring that the city has implemented.
So just a recommendation. I know that every college and university in this city has career fairs routinely. I would find out when they are and ask them if you can be there.
Absolutely. I would like a little success story. We do employ volunteers who need a little experience or hours for their college, and we've had quite a few rotate through R&I, and they learn a lot about the police department. And 2 are currently in the process to be a sworn officer, and many of the others are other civilian hires, whether they're police service representatives or another classification within the city. So absolutely, sir, we have taken advantage of those opportunities. They have rotated through R&I and, fortunately have, accepted positions, whether it be as a sworn officer or outside of the police department, unfortunately, but we definitely have taken advantage of those opportunities.
Have you given any consideration, again, understanding what this demographic now that's trying to become employed, especially college graduates, have you given any consideration to working off-site, work from home with regards to R&I? Could R&I have personnel that work from home?
So definitely, probably within the next few months, we are looking at implementing a telecommute policy or, a rotation of such. As we just discussed earlier, a lot of our work is still, paper, with paper. So it requires us to be in the office. But some of our phone calls, as we get employees trained up a little bit more, that will afford them more opportunities to possibly work from home. Yes.
That's one of the things that as we are competing for employees, that seems to be a deal breaker now for people when they are looking. And they have options for companies that will do that. And if it's not something that's going to compromise our data or compromise investigations, I think we should give some serious thought to that. I'm growing to understand that people want to work in their pajamas. If they can do the work at home that way, then why not? So let's just give it some thought. I think we might be able to recruit, retain more people that way. There are companies that are doing it that thought they wouldn't ever do that, and they've had to change. So, okay, great.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments and questions? Vice President Shields.
Thank you for the presentation, and it's great to hear all the great work that you're doing, and again, the importance of our professional staff that really help the department do what it is trying to do on a daily basis. So thank you for all of that support. I had a question about, one of the slides talked about, the number of call, like the call volume that you all receive, which is a significant, what is it, like 13,000 or something? And that there was a reference to, long, delay or delayed, answering times. Like, can you talk a little bit about what that is? Like, how long are is it officers who are calling you for warrant checks or other things? And what's that delay look like?
So it is mostly our vehicle calls that are coming in from our sworn officers out in the field or repossession companies or private tow companies. And the wait time sometimes is significant depending on our deployment. As Charles and I mentioned, we've been looking at allocating other resources. We've partnered with Office of Operations, and we have some of our records units assisting with that call load. We are still trying to hire and get all of our current employees trained on all the disciplines within R&I of phone calls so that, we could have more bodies answering, those types of phone calls. And we're just looking at other opportunities that we can just to get some assistance. We've redeployed some of our current employees from other sections that have been trained to take those calls. But it depends on a particular day. When there's a full moon, I gotta say those call loads are extremely higher than normal. And we're looking at the trends, what hours they come in. And to your point, Dr. Southers, we have looked at, having individuals log in from home because they can, especially on those peak periods where we can just call them up, log in, and they can take the calls, from wherever they are, whether it's at a geographic area or at home, to help minimize that call wait time.
Do you have any sense of how long a call wait, like on a full moon day, how long are officers waiting?
So it could be anywhere between an hour to 6 hours, again, just depending. Very rare is it 6 hours, but it has gone all that way. But on average, I'd say 2 to 3 hours lately, about 2 to 3 hours, depending. And we have priority calls, so those calls for stolen vehicles, recovered vehicles are the higher priority. So we take those calls first just from an officer safety perspective, and then we take some of the lesser calls, lesser in priority, I should say.
That's a lot longer than I was anticipating the answer being. And for these priority calls, how long is that? Like, so again, officers in the field wanting to check out to see if this is a stolen vehicle, how long are they waiting?
Yeah, on average, about 1 to 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours.
Yeah, we got to change that, Chief. But
Yes.
that's like unacceptable.
Now, Elena, so when they run a car in the field, they're not going through R&I, they're actually doing it on the air.
Correct. They're actually
The R&I, yeah, so if you're running a
calling-
car in the fields, because you're behind it, you need to check the status, that's not what she's talking about. That is actually comes back instantaneously.
Okay, so then what's the difference? So why would officers be called?
If they impound a vehicle or they're taking a stolen vehicle report, they have to call R&I to get it put in the system. That's really, I think, the delay that you're talking about.
Correct. The officers will call just to inform us that they have a stolen vehicle or, they've recovered a vehicle so that we can input it into the stolen vehicle system so that all agencies will know, to be on the lookout for a specific vehicle or to, a higher priority call in that respect. And they're put into a system so they can continue their normal duties, and we call them back. And all officers have a cell phone, and we'll call them back, and then they will provide us that information so that we could input it in the system.
Yeah, and so, the problem that Elena's been talking about here is actually a citywide problem that we have with our civilian positions. This affects records clerks. It's affecting us with photographers, those types of things. With the budget being a little bit restrictive, it's a little bit harder to get approval to fill these now. And I think, Elena, you can talk about the process that we have to go through to get approval to fill these positions. It's becoming very laborious for us.
Yes, yes. The city's prioritized critical hiring has been a detriment to the department and probably many other city departments, but I can only speak for LAPD because it's affecting me the most. But we have to request uh, our higher priority positions that we would like to hire for. And then Personnel Division, which is the LAPD's Human Resources, will take it to a committee. And the committee is City Council, CAO, and other members of the city family. They will look at that priority that the departments submit, and they will approve, I'm going to use the word unfreeze, those positions so that we can hire. And so that's the process that we have to go through. I can't speak how many unfreeze authorities that the department has received. I know RNI over the last year has only received 5, ability to approve 5. And I don't even want to tell you how many I've lost due to promotions in other city departments, but, you know, that's the process, and it is kind of a laborious process. Every 4 weeks, I have to submit my priority positions that I need to hire. And of course, my priority has definitely been my senior administrative clerks, as well as administrative clerks through the Target Local Hire Program. And to date, again, 5, I've gotten 3 senior admin clerks and 2 fingerprint identification experts for RNI. Again, I can't speak for the whole department because I don't know what has been approved. I'm thinking more because I see the advertisements, but I couldn't speak to that specifics.
So you get a sense for the process, and I think, Commissioner, you're right. I mean, there really has to be, you know, in the future, a look at how the job is structured, because if we're going to recruit people, we need to be a little bit more creative about what we allow people to do, because we're operating in a more dynamic environment, and I think people expect different things from their employers, and it's something that I think we've, as an organization, really need to look at and ask ourselves, can we restructure the job so that, one, we get more people applying, and when they do apply, if they get hired, they stay longer.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Curious, what are the impacts? So you touched on it a little bit, but what are the impacts in terms of wasted time of an officer? So is it literally an officer calling in and leaving a voicemail and then just not having any wasted time until the phone calls return, or what?
Correct. So it is a virtual, what does VCC stand for?
It's Verizon's Virtual Client Contact Center. So what happens is that they do have the ability to push button and be called back. However, what we have experienced is that sometimes areas will experience overtime expenses as a consequence of having to wait, especially if they have a gun. They're going to stay on the phone, they're going to wait, it will result in overtime. And as a consequence, people in the areas have actually tracked the time they're taking and have given us feedback. It's unfortunate, but it has also resulted in discussions opening up partnerships with the geographic areas. Maybe would you like to highlight that?
Yeah, finish, go ahead and put your thought.
So the option is that we've been called and they've said, look, we're experiencing overtime, we're expending a lot of our funds. What is it that we can do to partner with you? And the conversation has come back, well, can our people go into the system and do the update themselves? The issue that you run into is that if the officers in the field who are not trained to do this end up doing the inputting the information into the system, it's incorrect, and there isn't a control desk to verify the information, we can end up losing access to DOJ's system. And then what will we do as a department? Will we have to go to create an even longer delay and go into the sheriff's department? That's the issue. It's the quality control versus the speed.
And so this VCC, or the Virtual Contact Center, they leave a callback number, and then our staff will come back and respond to them. So, you know, can they get back to work? Absolutely. There is the ability to continue. Again, all officers have cell phones, and they usually provide us with their cell phone numbers, and we will get back to them and call them. there have been many instances where in the event that they are at the end of their watch, they will give it to the next person that's coming on duty. And so as we call the individual back or the new officer, they have 6 or 7, entries that they need for us to do. So, as far as there's definitely a wait time, but I can't necessarily say, and I don't know how the operations work, that they are taken out of the field for that amount of time.
Okay, and so is there a way to quantify that or to track it or do an analysis of how much time is actually taken from officers being able to be on patrol or in the community, and can we compare that to what it would cost to just hire more folks, so that we can potentially use it as an argument to release some of the restrictions on some of these positions? And then the other part of it, and I would say at the same time, how do we look at potentially adding officers maybe within the division that are in admin positions or in the station to support with the inputting, who are trained, so that we don't have any quality control issues, and the officer can continue doing their job, or if their shift is over, go home without having to exhaust themselves and the overtime that may come with that.
So Elena, what I'll do is I'll work with OO and have them do an analysis of their administrative light duty people, and we'll work with you to see how we can bridge that gap. But on the other issue, Elena, what we can do is, if you could give us a list of the calls that are coming in, and then we'll project that out to OO to see how long officers have been waiting, and be able to put some sort of dollar figure on how much time we're losing with officers waiting around to input information into a VIPU and things like that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. First, I want to thank you both for your leadership and the hard work that you all do. I know some folks in your unit, they work very hard, they work very long, and you have, I think I can speak for my colleagues here, you have an open invitation to let us help you. If you'd like to come back to us with some recommendations for innovation, technology, how to better recruit personnel that we can assist you with, or get that on a faster track, let's do that. I don't want to see us have people overworked. I'm very concerned about officer wellness throughout. We are all very concerned about officer wellness throughout the department. That's probably one of the reasons that someone might leave an organization, whether it's the police department or anything else in America. If we can retain people because their working conditions are better, because they're more comfortable, because they feel more supported, we want to do that. So if there's anything we can do as a commission, I know you're going to work with the chief on some things, please feel free to come back to us with some ideas, and if it's something that the commission needs to move on or support you on, we will.
Great. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
And thank you for the report. We'll now move on to agenda item number 4B, and that's an update on the Street Racing Task Force. Chief Graham, morning, sir.
Good morning, members of the commission. Madam Vice President, we'll talk offline about your traffic school. And I am very confident you don't want to hear from me. So I have brought with me Commander Craig Valenzuela, who himself actually went out with the Street Racing Task Force very recently and saw firsthand what our folks are dealing with out in the field. And actually the star of our show today would be Sergeant Arnold Castellanos, who is a longtime supervisor at the Street Racing Task Force. Unfortunately, his partner, Lieutenant Garcia, is in court today, but they are the brainchildren of the Street Racing Task Force, going back to when Jesse was a sergeant at Central Traffic Division back in 2015. Came to OCB with the idea of forming a task force, and it has grown since then into what it is today. So the commander and I will present a short and the boring part of the PowerPoint presentation you have in front of you, and then we'll turn it over to Arnold to really talk about the experiences and what they're seeing out there in the field. Commander?
Good morning. So I think there's a misconception that these are kids out to have some fun, and maybe perhaps the media is helping to fix some of that as we see more criminal activity. But I think this is really, as I've learned more about this, it's kind of an evolution from this idea of kids going out having fun and burning rubber and moving on. And in reality, as you'll see, that line has been blurred to include over 8,700 radio calls. These numbers are about a week old, but 8,700 radio calls, over 2,200 citations, almost 500 arrests. And when we're talking citations, we're everything from speed, exhibition of speed, modified vehicles, and speeding, running red lights, running stop signs, going to and from takeovers, and street races, because as you've seen in the media, these are oftentimes all night, all day kind of events. And the chief alluded to the fact that I went out, they were starting as early as 3:00 in the afternoon the Sunday that I was out with them. And those arrests we're looking at everything from guns, weapons, reckless driving, forgery, stolen checks, really any kind of criminal enterprise you can think of. We believe, and our investigations are showing, that these street races and the car clubs, not all of them, but that line is blurred and again, involved in a number of criminal activities. A lot of this, as you know, are pushed and seen through social media. It's a way to organize, but it's also, as I think Chief Graham's going to talk a little bit more about, it pays to have followers. And the monetization that goes along with it, and the encouragement in terms of posting and being involved. In terms of what we're doing, I think about a year ago, we reorganized and brought Central, South, and West traffic all together into one to try to deal with everything on, this side of the hill. Valley traffic still largely sits alone, and they handle their problems. But that doesn't mean that the folks from this side of the hill can't head over to the valley, or we can't pull them onto this side. We absolutely have that kind of communication and that kind of flexibility to pull folks where we know that we're going to have problems, and we're prepared to deal with them.
Especially because their chief lives in the valley.
If there's one thing for me that I would ask for you to take away from today, and at least from what I'm going to talk about, is the fact that we have a full-time dedicated resource to deal with street racing and takeovers. The Sheriff's Department, the CHP, it's an ancillary duty for them. So we are when we can, we get them to work with us. But if they're not working that day on street racing, then it's us trying to beat back the tide and deal with that problem. We have very good relationships with the sheriffs, with the CHP, with other surrounding areas, but also very recently, again, within the last year or so, we've been developing partnerships with the federal agencies. About 6 weeks ago, we met with CCD and GND, and GND was kind enough to let us explore taking some of their federal task force officer positions. And so we're exploring TFOs for our folks now. Again, we're kind of in the midst of doing that now. Don't really have anything that I can update and say, hey, we are moving forward, but we are looking into, can we do it? Will it make sense for us? And which federal agency might it work best for us to work with? These guys, men and women, have terrific relationships with everything from Fresno to San Jose to San Francisco to Chicago to Houston. This is not just a California, Southern California. This is a United States problem. I would say about 7 or 8 months ago, I did an interview with a newspaper from Connecticut as they were seeing a rise in their problems and kind of the things that we see here and the things that we do for them to talk to us about. Finally, my last part of this is, kind of what are we doing to try and create a more robust presence out in the field. This afternoon, I'd like to give a lot of credit to Captain, almost Commander Ryan Whiteman, and Chief Tingarides. they came to us and said, hey, we would like to give you some resources, dedicate both CSPB and South Bureau resources on a regular basis to tackle this problem. Resources are a huge part of this problem. And again, I'd also like to give a thank you to Chief Chow, who has dedicated some overtime hours for us specifically for street racing, because it's going to take hours, and it's going to take people out and numbers of officers out to try and tackle this problem. Because again, when I was out there a couple of weeks ago, I was shocked at the number of cars, the number of spectators. So this is very much a resource problem. So thank you to South Bureau, thank you to Chief Chow for getting helping to get those resources to us. Chief Graham, I think that's...
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about strategy pieces moving forward. So the first one I want to talk about is social media and the deleterious effects of social media that they're having on this. So this is a clearly illegal and dangerous activity. And about a year ago, the chief of police sent letters advising every one of the social media companies that this content is illegal, dangerous, and life-threatening. So they have been put on notice that this content there is legal ramifications for this content. What these social media stars do is they accumulate their followings through putting out these posts, and then they utilize that following as a feeder pool to recruit people into the other activities that the commander talked about earlier. We have had reports of social media of human trafficking. We've had reports of weapons smuggling. We have had reports of narcotics, and even to the point where they bury the lead, if you will, by having one of these big these store takeovers. Well, they'll go and hundreds of them will take over an AutoZone or a 7-Eleven, while what's actually going on is their partners in crime are delivering massive amounts of narcotics into areas. So we've uncovered that intelligence, and they're using this social media platform to recruit more and more people into their smokescreen. So a question that I posed to the good Carlos de la Guerra in our conversations is, where's the culpability of the social media companies for monetizing and then profiteering off of showing this obvious illegal and dangerous content? So I know that his office is doing the research, and we're continuing to explore through our own conversations with city leaders about the city taking a position that we will go after the social media companies for liability if we can prove that they monetized and profited off of a dangerous video that caused damage to the city of Los Angeles. Another part of this culture, and what the commander had alluded to, is that this is not just a Southern California problem. We have people coming from other states just so that they can get social media footage of them spinning in front of iconic Los Angeles locations. So the Dodger Stadium and downtown LA and Hollywood and Highland, right? So they're emigrating to Los Angeles to do this activity, and Los Angeles car clubs are going out to other locations in order to continue to swap followers and do all of these things. So this is becoming a tremendous problem. In an arrest that we made earlier this year, a Canadian social media spinning star had, between his Instagram and Twitter, 4 million followers. So this is the volume that we're talking about in that piece. So that's pillar number one. Pillar number two is we have taken 2 shots at asking the state legislature to assist us with the problems that we've had in the past with Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 4170.2. So that 41.70 is a series of sections that will allow for vehicle abatement to the city for a variety, 3 specific crimes: street racing, human trafficking, and narcotics. What happened was, back in 2008, the city attorney's office discovered that there was a preemption in state law that applies specifically to the one about narcotics, but requested that the department put a moratorium on using anything in the 41.70 section in order to not expose the city to any legal issues due to us already knowing that there was a preemption issue. And so we went to the state. We had a bill that we had Assemblyman Marisucci had sponsored and then pulled because the Transportation Committee was not looking favorably upon the conditions on it. The bill was reintroduced in this legislative session as Assembly Bill 3085, and 3085 was taken up by Assemblyman Gibson and co-authored by Assemblyman Marisucci. I'm just going to be frank, it got gutted in committee. 3085 was signed by the governor last week and provides additional judicial authority to get warrants for this activity, which is a strategy that the Street Racing Task Force utilizes to very good effect. So it will help. And it is my intention, and as far as my conversations with Councilmember Blumenfeld, who's been the elected leader in this effort, to take another swing at Sacramento again in the next legislative session. But in the meantime, I think that we, and in our conversation with Mr. De La Guerra, want to take a look at 4170.2 and find out what can we do at the city level to modify that ordinance so that it does not get preempted by state law, so that we can once again go back to utilizing this abatement thing. And just as a reminder, while the commander definitely alluded to the expansion of the street racing sideshow thing into illegal activities, for the purposes of the car piece, this is still a young person's issue. And I think when I looked at the arrests that the Street Racing Task Force made in 2022, not one of the 700 arrests that were made was the person over 26. And so the idea of permanently staining a criminal record by upping the penalties to a felony can be outweighed, I believe, in after a series of arrests and convictions that we just take away the implement of destruction. And that would be the vehicle that they'd spent so much time and money on. So it was effective on street racing back in the early 2000s. I believe that it would be effective again. There are 2 municipalities in California that are currently using it, and they're using it to great success. And I know Beverly Hills has at least legislation on the board to follow suit. So, and these are Southern California locations, by the way. So that's that piece. The next thing is, and I know I mentioned it briefly at a report that I had done several months ago here about supporting legal alternatives. I've met with an organization that calls themselves Street Legal. They've been involved in street racing and drag racing since the 1980s. And they have a plan that with sponsorship, indemnification insurance, inspections, mechanical inspections, and safety police, as far as the racing goes, where they believe that they can do pop-up locations in regions around the city, so that the people who just want to express their love of the car culture can do so without being involved in illegal activity. And so I am now in the process of putting together a meeting between that group and CD3, and to see what the city's requirements would be as far as permitting, what the engineering requirements are. We will be looping in DOT. So this is going to be a mushrooming effort. It's not going to be quick. But I do believe that I do believe this is the right path. And as I said before, as a law enforcement executive talking about this activity, I don't think we can have an earnest conversation about solutions unless we look at legal alternatives. And then the last one is an idea that we got from the city of Compton. There is an administrative citation enforcement section in the municipal code that allows for city ordinances to be enforced, not criminally, but civilly through the use of an administrative citation. That administrative citation has what's the word I'm looking for? An increasing fine with multiple convictions of the same type of activity, and tops out at $500. The current municipal code section that makes it illegal to be a spectator at a street race falls under the ACE citation and is utilized by the Street Racing Task Force. What Compton did is they pulled that out of their list of ACE citations and singled that out because of the public safety nuisance that's become in Compton, and they increased that to a $2,000 fine at the first offense, and then every other offense after that. And what they did in exchange was they clarified the definition of what it means to be a spectator at a street race to prevent people from just simply being gaffled up because they were present, as opposed to people who are actively involved in what's happening. And as you can see from some of the video footage, there are many people in that crowd that are filming, that are participating in the activity. So those are the 4 pillars of our strategies moving forward. We'll be working, again, continue to work with Police General Counsel and the City Council to move these initiatives forward. Within the department, just to have an opportunity to talk about it, our Street Racing Task Force does an absolutely fantastic job, but they're all loans. They're all loans that were stripped out of the traffic divisions throughout the city. I've asked in the last 3 budgets for the Street Racing Task Force to be an independently funded position, where the positions are funded, so that we can return those authorities back to the traffic divisions, because I think we're still on track for having more traffic fatalities than we are homicides this year. So that the Street Racing Task Force can operate, and we can go, and the traffic divisions can operate at full deployment as we can. So we will be hopeful again in the next budget cycle to see that, but we'll be asking for that again. And then finally, had a conversation with Chief Margolis, Chris Margolis from the CHP, and they have a new funding source for street racing, and so we connected up the 2 lieutenants that work for us respectively, so that they can form a more permanent partnership as far as regional street racing enforcement. So those are our strategic initiatives moving forward. So now I want to turn it over to Sergeant Castellanos, who is going to talk about one particular car club that demonstrates what we're dealing with.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, City Attorney, sir. As mentioned, I'm Sergeant Castellanos, and thank you, Chief Graham and Commander Valenzuela, for the introduction. As Chief Graham mentioned, there's a number of car clubs that are active in these street takeovers. And the way it works is these car clubs come out and they try to challenge each other to see who's got the better drivers, who's got the better followers, who's got the biggest crowd. It's not uncommon for them to get in fights with each other. It's not uncommon for them to become even more as bad as criminal street gangs. There's this particular car club called Third Avenue. This particular car club is reminiscent of an outlaw motorcycle gang. The reason I say that is because Third Avenue, in the time that we've been investigating them, has branched out and now has chapters throughout all of California, New Orleans, Nevada, and throughout many other states. The president of that particular organization is here in Los Angeles. He's been arrested for other crimes, is pending currently being released. We've actually been able to identify quite a bit of activity, criminal activity, as mentioned by Chief Graham and Commander Valenzuela, in regards to narcotics smuggling, in regards to human trafficking. It's even gotten to the point where we've gone to street takeovers, and as Chief Graham mentioned, a lot of times these are just covers for other crimes. I'll give you a case in point. Just recently, there's particular individuals from this particular car club that like to steal Corvettes. And I'm sure everyone here has seen that Corvette get in the pursuit on the freeway, and the police, we physically can't catch up to that car. There's no way. And the risk and the danger they put into the public at, it doesn't outweigh trying to capture them. And they know that. And what they're doing is they're using these same cars to smash into businesses. One particular night, we were in Southeast Division. We knew that they had a stolen car. We were trying to follow them and went to the takeover. We broke them up. Turns out 30 seconds earlier, they had just smashed into a business and took out the ATM and stolen the ATM as well as ransacked the business. This is all going on during the street takeovers. And it becomes very difficult sometimes because it becomes a question of mitigation versus enforcement. Lots of times, if we do complete enforcement, it's not uncommon for it to be between 200 and 400 vehicles. I'm not talking people, vehicles. So if you pull over, if I've got 10 units working, you pull over 10 people, there's no more mitigation. At that point, now we're giving out 10 tickets. It's going to take anywhere between 30, 40 minutes to impound that car, cite all those people, do all that. But now, all that activity's gone crazy everywhere else throughout the city. So we have that delicate balance of being able to continue to preempt these I mean, we follow the crowds, we get social media intelligence, sometimes we get information from different sources that we're able to try to stay ahead of it. It's uncommon for news to put out how many actually happen, but just this past weekend, we worked 5 to 5, we were out every weekend. There were over 30 street takeovers. But the news doesn't tell you that. That happens every weekend. On the weekend of Memorial Day, this past Memorial Day, we broke up 72 street takeovers. I was at an intersection for 30 minutes, and people were still arriving. It was an event where people from the Bay were showing up down here to Los Angeles, and there was almost 600 cars. It was just out of control. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's given these individuals unfettered access to so many co-conspirators for like some of the crimes that Chief and Commander have explained. Vehicle theft, check fraud, selling of guns. They're trying to make the most of all this. And it's kind of like the Wild West because it crosses so many jurisdictions and so many regions. There's no one particular agency that has a hold of it. Being that we're the only dedicated task force, we have investigators that have started just scratching the surface of everything. We recently got reached out to by Las Vegas PD. They reached out to us that the same Third Avenue crew just last weekend committed 3 robberies and a home invasion burglary. And they're asking us for intel on it. Because like, who are the players? Who's doing what? The same as a criminal street gang. But because these aren't tasked as criminal street gangs, and because they're not subject to a particular region or a particular race or ethnicity, it crosses boundaries between family, creed, everything. So, within these people, there are still criminal street gang individuals who don't show their actual affiliations with these others, but they're using that to access more and more victims as well as co-conspirators. So what we do every weekend is we try to do as best as we can, like Chief and Commander mentioned. I myself have been affected by this in terms of when I got approached by Lieutenant Garcia. I hate it when I hear all this street takeover and all these cars burning out. We do our best to try to mitigate it, but at the same time protect some of these kids from themselves, because I've been to some of these events where kids were running back and forth to the next spot and they got killed. And you guys see them right there with the NOS tank and alcohol in there. So we do our best to, as mentioned, mitigate it, but at the same time try to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep everyone safe. And until we can get a bigger handle on it with a region, like perhaps with the CHP, we do coordinate with them a lot, but it's just kind of at this point, it's a tennis match. The more we enforce, the more they go to the county. Until they push them out, then they come right back up and we go back and forth. So those are some of the challenges and some of the things that we've gone through, and if there's any questions.
Well, thank you. I can't begin to tell you how educational this has been. I had no idea that this was a national problem, an international problem, and that it encompassed so many criminal activities as well. Again, I'm one of those folks who, when I see it on TV, I think it's just kids with cars that are taking advantage of a situation. Just a couple of questions. First, thank you and thank all the men and women working in your task force for the hard work that they're doing, especially being on loan. Have you appeared before the California State Assembly Committee on Public Safety?
Sadly, we've not gotten that far. We have met with the transportation consultants and public safety consultants, and that's as far as we've gotten as far as the testifying process.
You probably should. You're doing incredible work, and it's very challenging. And I think that them seeing what we've just seen would be at least somewhat of a level of influence with regards to how serious this is and what can be done if you have the resources. Chief, I'd like to ask you too, chiefs, when's the last time that you've had either a press release and/or a press conference about this? I think that everyone out there like me who thinks that this is a takeover on a weekend and it's just a couple of kids and it doesn't happen as often as it does, I think would be really well informed if they were able to understand this. Have we had a press conference, a press release about the Street Racing Task Force in the last year?
Specifically about our task force, no. We have participated along with regional partners in press events
Okay.
that were put on that to shed a light on this. We have had press conferences, not specifically about the task force, but about solving crimes and making arrests related to the suspects for this. The commander participated in a highly publicized meeting of the Board of Supervisors where this came up. I spoke at a street racing symposium in Compton that was put on by Supervisor Mitchell. So we are constantly participating in the messaging of this. And if you follow any of the traffic divisions on social media, they're very active on social media at pushing out what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're seeing. Now, of course, we have to balance that also with our intelligence gathering efforts, and don't want to show too much of our hand in that particular category. But that being said, there could be more. We could do more.
I think the sheer nature of the fact if you had a wheel and street racing was in the center, at the hub, and you had as spokes the spin-off on all the crimes associated with this, I think it would be better appreciated with regards to what this challenge is and more importantly, what you're doing to address it. So that might be something we should think about that doesn't compromise your sources and methods of doing things, but informing the public about how serious this is and how broad it is. But thank you. Vice President Shields.
Thank you. I'll echo all of those comments of how educational this was and understanding more of the scope than what we hear about on the news. And so, you know, when you were mentioning the outlaw motorcycle gangs, this is exactly what they sound very reminiscent of it. And when you put up the slide of all of the kind of ancillary crime around them, a lot of those look like predicate racketeering crimes. And so hopefully if there's anything that we can do to help support task force officers being loaned out, I think this is something bigger than Los Angeles. And having LAPD lead the charge, but working with the federal authorities to actually make a dent in this is what is needed. I think, you know, trying to have LAPD solve the problem is not going to work alone. So I'm glad that you're looking at these additional resources and, you know, anything we can do to help support that, whether it's resources or otherwise. And Chief Graham, you know, you raised a really great point about the fact that these are, you know, lone bodies taken away from traffic at a time when traffic accidents and fatalities has been on the rise and is at unacceptable levels in LA. And so hopefully we can work on that with the budget so that you have the resources you need to both keep our streets safe for pedestrians and motorists alike, and also free from this type of organized crime, which is what this sounds like. A couple of questions. Has there been, and I know you've worked the legislative route, and that always has its challenges. Has there been outreach to like the state attorney general's office is there grants that are, you know, available or other resources? I will tell you the state AG has a lot of power, including over social media sites, and potentially can exert some of that cooperation, if you will, by reaching out to the state AG's office. They seem, given the problem that this is on a California basis and nationwide, I think they would be a receptive audience, and I think that should be pursued. One other question, you know, when you talk about kind of the balance between trying to mitigate it in the moment while also you're outnumbered vastly. Is there any opportunity to do kind of like almost like mass citations through the use of like drone footage or something of like, here is all of the people who've been present here, here's the camera footage of what they are doing, and then they get these things in the mail. It's like red light cameras on steroids. And they can go, the letters can go to their insurance companies, it could go to their parents, whatever it is, to get the message that these are people involved in this and try to deter it that way. Has there been any kind of creative ideas being used that way?
So the one thing I can add to that is, again, about a month ago, or a little less than that, Chief Hamilton at Detective Bureau connected us with somebody from LexisNexis. So hopefully within the next week or so, 2 weeks, we have a meeting with her to find out what some of their technology strategies might be, specifically towards street racing. Have they thought of street racing as they, think of, the technology kind of things that we might be able to employ? So we've talked about drones. You guys have heard a lot more about drones than probably I have, but given battery lives and how far we can go, we have talked about it. I don't know that at least in the short term, will we be able to employ those and to what extent? But I don't think that's out of the realm of us to be looking at.
And I understand that would require certain policy changes or policy revisions. I would just say that we would be open to kind of creative ideas as a pilot program of, again, given the number of these takeovers and the number of vehicles present at the time, you can't ticket your way out of this. And so thinking about creative ways to try to reduce the problem is all I'm at. Whether it's, the helicopters up there and doing something that can be out there longer. Whatever it is, let's just come up with some kind of creative ideas.
Absolutely.
I think some of the things that you mentioned are excellent that I haven't thought of. The commander hasn't thought of. We're going to be brainstorming about that. I just want to assure you, though, in a more mundane method, other than drones and airships, we do utilize technology in order to do follow-ups and then after-the-fact enforcement. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about it, but it has been a successful tactic for the task force.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I want to echo the visiting the state legislature. I think especially now that the governor has updated or added some legislation that helps us here, really looking at whether it's his office or the Attorney General's office to help us enforce some of those. And part of that enforcement includes resources and funding, but also potentially bring CHP and other partners to the table so that there are those regional efforts and potentially directed by our officials at the state level so that we're not left alone trying to figure out and address this issue. The other thing I would say is in terms of press release, I just want to echo that or press conference. And really more, I would say less of what was mentioned in terms of outcomes of enforcement, but really more the preventative approach, the awareness, the statistics. These are the dangers of participating in that. These are the activities that are related to these takeovers, and done not just in I'll sort of repeat this, right? Not in an enforcement outcome approach or a scare tactic, but reaching an audience, not only the youth themselves or the individuals involved, and say these are the consequences to your vehicle, to your whatever it is we would be able to do, but also reaching the parents so that the parents understand when they hear from their under 26-year-old person that they're just going to go hang out with some car club friends, that there potentially is more to that. Now, we want to make sure not to blanket that because I think there is connections to cars and vehicles and the social realm of that could be positive and is positive and has been for many years. So being tactical and careful about delivering those messages, and not a one-off, but just an ongoing attempt to educate our community on what it all entails.
Commissioner Garcia, it's funny you mention that because I quite often run across parents while we're out at the takeover scenes, and I used to work at federal task force where we used to go after online criminals, and like I would tell their parents back then, like keep an eye on your kids, see what they're doing, make sure that you know where they're at on the internet. I think you're absolutely right. Getting a message across, something similar to it, like, hey, look, know where your kids are on the weekends. Make sure you just keep an eye on them, check on them. They may be 18, they may be 19, whatever it might be. But I can tell you right now, I haven't had one parent when they come out to help pick up their kids because we were taking the car and everything, say, oh yeah, I knew he was here. They were more scared of their parents than they were of us. So I think that's absolutely hitting the nail on the head right there with that.
And also, I want to just highlight that there's an organization that was started by a woman named Lily Trujillo, who took the tragedy of her own daughter's death in a street racing incident to form streetracingkills.org. Not only have they worked with our task force extensively over the last several years to do messaging and to do intervention and to come up with innovative ways to create interventions with young people, because they're much more in tune with the messaging than we would be. But they've also become the registered diversion school for the district attorneys, so that so they can put on the diversion school. But unfortunately, one of the things that they discovered is because of court disconnect, diversions, especially diversions for traffic citations, don't get reported consistently. And so they had a young man who came to a diversion class who proudly boasted that it was his 7th diversion from a street racing misdemeanor that he had received. And because of being different courts and even different counties in which he was cited in, he just needed to check the box so he can go back to doing his activities. So that to say, Commissioner Garcia, there is organizations out there that we partner with, but I think as our traffic officers are in our schools doing traffic safety, doing car seat sober graduation, there is a market for that messaging to go to the youth and actually be directed at parents through the schools if they're willing to partner with us.
Thank you. And then I'd also like to learn more about your proposal for a permanent task force in the budget. So maybe that's something, potentially a longer conversation that we can have, and I'd like to understand the scale of it and the resources required for it.
Yes, sir. We have sent a proposal to our chain of command. So I'll just ask that it be forwarded to the commission.
Thank you.
You know, Commissioner, just to add on to what they're saying, we get a report from the Street Racing Task Force every week, and they do disrupt a lot of task forces every night when they're out, but unfortunately, it's such a big problem. There are other street takeovers that happen. But I think really the future of this is kind of what they alluded to. This has to be a regional effort. And I think that might be something that maybe Cal Chiefs has to take up, because we really need a task force that is not just limited to Los Angeles, but you know, we're talking CHP, sheriffs, other smaller agencies that can assign people that are part of the task force, and this task force needs to go throughout the region. But the other piece too is I think we've been very successful with our U.S. Attorney's Office and the AG on going after organizations that are criminal in nature. That's the other piece I think that has to be built out. So this task force, if we are able to pull a regional task force together, will not only be what the men and women of the traffic group are doing right now, but also some of the behind the scenes stuff about taking care of these organizations that are evolving into these criminal organizations. Chief Graham and I don't know, a couple of years ago, Donnie, I think we made this circuit and meeting with some of our assembly members at the time. That was maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was the first time around.
Yeah, but there was definitely an interest on the assembly members to take an active role from the state side about how they could support this effort. And at that time, the street racing was kind of emerging. It wasn't at the level that it's right now. So I think there's definitely some things that can be done on that level.
I dare say there might be more experience on the dais than there is here at the table in negotiating with the state legislature. So we would be certainly open to any tutoring in order to negotiate that. Because yes, there is, we have presented in front of City Council, we've presented in front of City Council Public Safety, we've presented in front of the Board of Supervisors. We have a presentation that I think that would be, would have impact and move folks at the state level if they just were open to having that discussion.
I think that problem could be addressed if they know who you are and what they're doing in the scope of this challenge as you've presented today. So I think it'll be important to try to get on that agenda and get an audience with them. I think once they hear you, it sells itself. So with that, I would just like to, on behalf of my fellow commissioners, thank you for an incredible report. This has been very, very educational and useful, and we'll follow up to see how we can help you move this forward. Thank you for the good work.
All the credit goes to the task force.
And the commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda items 5A1 to 5B in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Good afternoon. The commission has concluded closed session. We'll have a report out by Executive Director Django Sibley.
Thank you, Commissioner. At the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on October 1st, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote. And first of all, item 5A1, OIS 059-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 detective 1. For drawing exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 detective 1. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 detective 1. And for case 5A2, officer involved shooting number 060-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 sergeant 1, 1 police officer 3, 2 police officers 2, and 1 police officer 1. For drawing an exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 3, and 1 police officer 2. For intermediate force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2 and 1 police officer 1. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 3. And for item 5B1, the item was discussed, and that concludes the report out.
Thank you. That concludes today's business. I move that today's meeting be adjourned. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.